life. He came back to one of our TLC programs back during the spring, I believe it was, and share with us his testimony. It was a blessing to me. I know it's going to be a blessing to you. I'd like to invite him to come up now, Kenny, and y'all give him a warm round of applause. Come on.
It is a pleasure indeed to be with you tonight. And thank you, Brother Hamilton. And I want to thank this church for such a warm welcome. And I feel right at home here tonight. And I still think about my visit during TLC. And I certainly haven't forgotten the food. That was such a pleasure. And if I remember correctly, maybe there was some banana pudding involved. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. I'd like for my wife to stand. I'd like to, those that may not know her, I want to introduce her tonight. This is my wife, my companion of almost 40 years. She didn't think I would remember that, but almost. And not only is she my wife, she's also my pastor. And I love her very much, and she travels around when she can with me.
You said you can move that music out of your way.
Oh, that's fine. I may sing before it's over.
Just set it on the floor anyway. Thank you.
But it is indeed a pleasure to be here. For those that may not know me, I'm from Manny, Louisiana, and we did have homecoming last week in Manny, by the way, and had quite a success on the ball field there as well. But I'm a very busy guy. I like to stay busy, and I stay involved in a lot of things, and I like it that way. And of course, my background, I'm a maintenance man by trade, and by education, I'm a broadcast engineer, and I still take care of several radio stations along with a hospital that I am the facilities director there in Manny, along with the safety officer. So I wear a lot of hats, and I like it. And besides that, I'm assistant pastor to my wife, so that's a wonderful privilege to be involved in ministry. So I wanted to talk again tonight just a little bit about an experience that I had back in July of 05, actually July the 7th of 05. And this day started out as a very typical day, a very busy day as every day of my life seems to be. Sometimes my morning starts as early as 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it doesn't end until 8, 10 o'clock at night, sometimes later. But that day was very typical, except for the extra hat I was wearing that day. I was serving as our parish Homeland Security Director at the time, which was a part-time position, which turned out to be way more than I ever bargained for. And if you remember the 05 hurricane season, it was very active. You probably remember Hurricane Katrina and certainly Hurricane Rita that affected us. But previous to that, I was dealing with a hurricane, and I'm not real sure of the name, it slips my mind. But I had been dealing with that hurricane all day long, making some preparations for a possible event. And later on that day, of course, as my day began to come to an end, I made my way home finally and decided it was time for me to go get a haircut. And so I left home. It had been raining a little bit and kind of storming. And of course, I made it to the barber shop to where when I got there, the power was off from the storm that had passed through. So there wasn't much to do but turn around and go back home. So a few hundred yards from the barber shop, as I began to make my way back home, I come into a fairly sharp curve on a small country road, and of course I met an SUV that was way bigger than the vehicle I was in, and needless to say, this this vehicle was on the wrong side of the road, and of course, I was involved in an unavoidable head-on crash with this vehicle. And this particular event changed my life forever. And some, of course, would call it probably an accident, but I look at it a little bit different. I think it was a divine appointment for me. And fortunately, no one in the SUV, to my knowledge, was injured. But I was shipped by ambulance to our local hospital, the Sabine Medical Center, to the ER, which my wife at that point had been already notified and met me there. And it appeared, though, that I just had some superficial, minor superficial injuries. However, a CAT scan of my head revealed that I had some more serious injury than that. There was trauma to the left quadrant of my head, which caused a subdural hematoma to the brain. And I don't know how serious that is, other than the fact that it paralyzed me on my left side, my right side, I'm sorry. The injury was on my left side. And the attending physician that evening made the decision to medevac me by helicopter to LSU Trauma Center, Shreveport. And it was kind of interesting. Of course, my wife told me some things that went on during that time that I wasn't aware of. She said, "Kenny, you were still in the hurricane preparedness mode, and you were barking out orders to me and giving me phone numbers of people and that I should call and what I should tell them, and apparently really had her in a dither, but nevertheless, for some reason or another, it seemed as though I really wanted to know the capabilities of the helicopter pilot. And of course, being a maintenance guy, I like to be thorough, and if I'm riding on a vessel, I'd kind of like to know if it's going to make it where I'm going. So apparently I had that on my mind, and I was much interested in the number of hours and the qualifications of this pilot for some reason. And apparently I guess it was the flight nurse, must have gone outside to where the helicopter was had landed, and apparently mentioned this to the pilot, which came inside to see me. Of course, I had mentioned that I was personal friends with an adjutant general named General Landino. So I guess you can understand I probably had his attention by then. And but seldom does a helicopter pilot ever leave their vessel, you know, especially in our area. And he came in, and apparently Diane said, I questioned him pretty thoroughly, and he assured me that he was very qualified and had a number of hours in the cockpit of this particular helicopter, as well as a number of hours in training, and I don't know, it went on and on and on, I suppose, but anyway, he was capable of flying me and his helicopter to the trauma center in Shreveport. But I found out that I was actually quizzing the wrong people, because Diane also told me that I mentioned to her and everyone at the LSU Trauma Center that these folks had dropped me. And that wasn't the case apparently, but in my mind, I thought I had been dropped by the staff that was flying on this helicopter, apparently when we got out. She never did convince me that was not the way it was, and I'm not convinced today that they didn't drop me. So, having said that, there is some humor in disasters, and it is more humorous now than it was then, believe me. But by the time I reached the trauma center there, of course, the wound that I had received turned into be paralysis, of course, on my right side, and another problem that went along with that was a short-term memory. And for those that have never been around anyone with short-term memory, you're in for a treat. And of course, LSU, as busy as it was, they kept me on a backboard in the emergency room for 24 hours, strapped down, until they had a room available for me. And that was quite an experience within itself, quite grueling, as a matter of fact. And one nurse came and asked me, Mr. Carter, you hurting anywhere? And I don't remember a lot about this other than the fact I must have said, yeah, my back's killing me. And before I knew it, I was getting a morphine IV push. And I'm like, oh no, this couldn't be good. And of course, I was sick to beat the band. But nevertheless, there's always some humor in things that happen to you. So my little wife tolerated me, or maybe I should say was very patient with me for the next day or so with this short-term memory. And really, I don't remember, honestly. The strange thing about it is when you have this kind of trauma, and everybody knows you got a problem but you. And I never realized that there was an issue, other than the fact I was in a hospital for some reason. And that was quite interesting and still is kind of humorous, some of the things that happened. But the physical aspect of this was very overwhelming due to the limited mobility that I had. My right arm did not function very well. Lost a lot of strength in that arm, and of course my right leg was paralyzed as well. Of course, after a while, then they began to try to work with me and to get me up, and physical therapy, if that's what you want to call it. I call it physical torture, but nevertheless, that's what they called it. But this was very hard to cope with. I was so physically active, and I'm a jogger, and I jog quite a bit. I jogged quite a bit then. I still jog quite a bit, and it's kind of addictive, as you might know, Pastor, by now, that once you get into that mode, you enjoy it. And I'd enjoyed about a 5K run that morning before this accident, and so it's hard to explain how I felt. The emotional and, of course, the psychological effect was just unbelievable. When I realized that the condition I was in, of course, it required for me to get up and to move around, I had to have a walker. It was kind of like I had a stroke or something, and was barely able to move around. And I would basically take a step and drag my right leg behind me. It was very depressing, not knowing what the outcome would be, of course. The unknown is always something to deal with. But on about the second day or so, the trauma doctor came in to speak with me, and it's a young doctor named Dr. Willis, young black lady, very beautiful young lady, very brilliant young lady. And she came in to evaluate me and to check my reflexes, mobility, and this kind of thing. After completing her examination, she just kind of stood back and looked at me, and I said, well, Doc, what do you think? And she said, Mr. Carter, can I be perfectly honest with you? And I said, sure. I like honesty and I like truth. And she started, well, this may take hours or days, weeks, months, years. Frankly, Mr. Carter, you may never be any better. You may never walk right again. And at that point, I never had even considered that, but I think my faith might have, I won't say it failed, but it certainly tottered a little bit. And it really let the wind out of my sail. But my darling little wife, full of faith and hope, she stood firm, as she did through this whole thing. And she told the doctor, said, that's just not acceptable. Not only is he going to recover, he's going to be 100%, if not better. I'm like, wow, this is faith. I like this stuff. This is good. And of course, this doctor smiles and said, well, let me tell you what I think will happen. I think the swelling will gradually go down, and the bruising will dissolve and eventually go away. And very slowly, I think you will begin to receive some of your motor skills back again. We don't know to what extent or whatever. So what she didn't take into account was my God and the healing power of God. He's a healing God tonight. I don't know how else to say it. That day passed, and there was no change, and into the next day, and there was no change or improvement. And all along, all the time, there was many people of all different faiths that was praying for me. I know around the clock. I'm well aware of that. And of course, my wife also prayed fervently for me and stood in the gap for me. And she read many scriptures dealing with healing to me, scriptures of healing and scriptures about healing. And the Word seems to sink down and to get into your very soul. So it's all important and all powerful. God's Word is true and powerful. And I like the way you have your church surrounded with these scriptures on the walls. I feel very comfortable with that. And it brings a hope when you read God's Word. So she read many of those scriptures, and it was just a wonderful time. And then the very next morning, as I awoke, I realized that I was different, and I told Diane that morning, I said, Diane, I feel very different this morning. She says, well, how? What's different? What's going on? I said, well, I don't know. I woke up, I just feel different. So she was on the phone talking, so I slipped out of the bed off the side like I normally did, and I reached over and grabbed the walker, and I realized, I said, I don't think I'm going to need this today. And I'd realized something wonderful had happened. And I folded that walker up and leaned it against the wall, and I started walking toward the restroom, and Diane is on the telephone. Of course, her eyes gets about this big, and by that time she realized something wonderful has happened as well. And I want you to know something. This is not something we have to practice, but it's something that we did. There was shouting in my room that morning, and it was such a joy. I was just overjoyed. I still don't have the words to explain. And all I know is something wonderful happened to me during the night. Now, it was just a moment or two, my physical therapist came in. And she grabbed the walker up just like she always did and straps a belt around me. And I said, oh, wait a minute. I don't think I'm going to need that this morning. Well, what are you talking about? I said, well, all I can say is something happened to me. Well, okay. Well, at least let me keep the belt around you. So anyway, we go out, and there's a big circle around the hospital, and we walk through the corridor and make 3, 4, 5 circles, and she said, this is most unusual. She was just totally blown away and totally amazed, and went on how unusual that this was. And all I could tell her was that we serve a very unusual Lord and Savior. I didn't have any other explanation other than that, because I was still getting the same medicine, the same treatment at the same times I'd always gotten. It hadn't done much for me. But something wonderful happened during the night. And I'm not against medicine and doctors and nurses. Don't misunderstand me. What I'm saying. All I can tell you, when the great physician shows up, it doesn't require needles. It doesn't require surgery. It doesn't require medicine. All it requires is his touch. And all I know is he touched me. So she kind of tried to evaluate my condition, but there was no logical explanation. And I just want you to know the Jesus that we serve tonight is so unusual. I mean, who else do you know? Who else do you know that he's the same age as his daddy, but yet he's older than his mother? Huh? Isn't that astounding? That's our God. Isn't he unusual? Christ is unusual tonight. So, needless to say, doctor said, well, there's not much need keeping you here. We're going to discharge you this afternoon. You can go home. And I said, wow, this is wonderful. Now, I wasn't 100%. I know that. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you I was. It required some work on my part. But God had already moved and already worked. And I began to gain strength. I began to have some physical therapy here. And I'd get up early and go down to the track, and I'd walk. And it wasn't long that not only was I walking, I was working again, I was jogging again. And about 2 weeks later, I entered a race there in Zwolle, which I always try to make every year. And I came in first in my age group. Not bad for a guy 2 weeks before had been crippled. So God is just an amazing God. What else can I say? But let me talk to you. This was all serious stuff, but let me give you a little bit more, if you would. I know time is short here tonight, but I don't have much memory of the accident. I can't tell you really what went on. I have very little memory of the 24, 30 hours, 36 hours after the accident. I don't remember much of that either. However, sometimes during the course of the accident, I had a really wonderful spiritual experience with Christ that I always like to share this among believers. I know there's skeptics out there and people that say, well, you're nuts. And I know I've had a head injury. I understand that. But this was so special to me, and I hope it will be special to you. That I was in such pain, and that kind of trauma to the head, naturally you would be. And of course, when you start to bleed and your brain starts to swell, yeah, you're going to hurt. So I was in a lot of pain sometime during the course of all this. But I remember, out of nowhere, a set of hands just reached down and picked me up, just like that. Phenomenal. That was an experience that you got to understand. I went to get a haircut. I'm still confused as to what this is all about. And when I was picked up and sat down in front of this person, I'm like, wow, this is neat. Immediately, I grabbed his hands. And why, I'm not real sure, but that just seemed like the thing to do at the time. And when I was standing there, I'd never been in such a place of, even though it was unfamiliar to me, immediately my pain subsided. It just ceased, just like that. It's a place so calm and so serene and so peaceful. I'd never been in a place like that before. When I grasped his hands, I began to feel, I said, my God, these hands are such trauma and such injury to these hands. And I reacted somewhat like Thomas would, or I guess like anybody else would, that would know. As Thomas said, my Lord and my God, that's exactly what I thought, my Lord and my God. Except I thought, this is him. I know who this is. And it wasn't because I recognized him, it was because of his hands. His appearance wasn't what I had been led to believe or what I would have expected. I'm not sure if he had long hair and a beard. I really couldn't tell you because of his brilliance and his glory. It was such brightness like I've never seen before. So it was very difficult to look upon. I had never seen anyone like this before. And the amazing thing was he called me by my name. If that won't humble you. He said, Kenny, my child. That still rings in my ear very loudly today. It was a very humbling experience. Now, our communication was neat. I've never experienced anything like this, and I'm in communications. I know what it takes to communicate. Not that my communication skills are good, but I work with radio and two-way, and I understand a little bit about communicating. But this was so neat. It didn't require a telephone, a microphone, or nothing. It was kind of like a telepathy interaction. I don't know how else to explain it. He knew what I was thinking. You know what? He knows what you're thinking tonight too. I just thought I'd throw that in because sometimes our thoughts are not always as pure as they need to be. You know what I'm saying? So be careful what you think about, because he knows. I'm just here to tell you he knows. And it was so neat. He knew what I was thinking, and before I could address him or articulate anything out loud, it's just when I would think, he would answer me. I'm like, my goodness, that was something else. And I was thinking to myself, I said, you know, I've never been in a place like this. Man, this is a place such peace and such joy and serene. I said, I could stay here forever. And he said, He answered me. He said, no, Kenny, I got to send you back. I'm like, oh no, I just got here. This is such a place you would never want to leave. And he said, yeah, I'm going to send you back. He said, I'm going to put you back in your box. And I've thought about this a lot. Maybe I misunderstood what he said. Maybe I misunderstood him to say body, but I was pretty sure he said box. And Diane kind of shed some light on this for me sometime later, as we've discussed this many times. He said, Kenny, you are a maintenance man. And where else would you work from but from a toolbox? Where else would he have put you but back in a toolbox? I know that's kind of strange, but where else would you work from? That's common to you. That's simple. It's recognizable for you, familiar to you. So here I am back in my box, and that's where I'm working from. And I'm humbled to be working at all, but God has given me I don't know if you'll call it a second chance or third chance, fourth, I don't know how many it's been, but anyway, all I can say is that I'm privileged to be standing here tonight. So during the course of this time, I saw quite a bit of beauty there, beyond words. I can't explain it. I suppose I was on a street, if that's what it was. Yes, it was paved with gold, for those that might want to know that, as far as I could see. And that's quite phenomenal by today's standards, I would say. The decor that I saw was greater, more beautiful than anything I've ever witnessed. Sure, I saw things that were familiar, diamonds and rubies and pearls and gems, plus a lot of other wonderful things that I have no idea what it was because I've never seen those things before. So I can't explain that. I don't know what I may have missed. There was, for some reason, I was focused. I didn't look from side to side or anything other than peeked over his shoulder once just to see beyond. So I really don't know what else was there or what else I might have missed. my mom even asked me, hey, did you see your dad? I said, no, I didn't see Dad. I didn't see anyone else. I don't know how to explain that. Was I in heaven? I don't know. All I can tell you is I was with Jesus. And I do remember this. I glanced at my watch for some reason. And it was very strange that I know it was working. And it gave me a reading, but it never changed. It stayed right there. The same digits just stayed there. Time just seemed to have stood still. And I don't have any scientific proof or any scientific explanation of that. All I can say is when I returned home, I have 2 clocks by my bed, not 1, but 2. And that's for a reason. But my watch would have been set with those clocks. And again, there was nothing scientific about this. It could have been this way beforehand, but my watch would have been set with those. After returning home, I looked at those clocks. There was 4 minutes difference in the time. And was I there 4 minutes? I don't know. All I can say is it was 4 minutes difference. And tonight there's so much more I could share with you about this. But the remainder of this experience was basically for me, personal to me. And I haven't shared that with anybody, including my wife, because I believe the Lord would have it to be that way. So it would seem like a good stopping place tonight. And I think it'd also be a good time just to remind you that our God is an awesome God. Our God is a great God. Our God can do anything. I believe it. I believe it. I believe it. Nothing is too great for our God tonight. And I'll just ask this question. If you do not know Him, tonight's the night. He's full of grace and He's full of mercy. And He cares about each of you tonight, each one of you. You see, our God would not do anything for me that He wouldn't do for you. And I believe that tonight. Maybe you're here and you're experiencing something in your life. Maybe you're sick. I don't know what you may be going through. All I can tell you tonight is God is able. And I know that He can. He can. He is Savior. He is Lord. He's King of Kings. He's a mighty God. He's Prince of Peace. He's the everlasting Father. He's a mighty counselor. He's my healer tonight. And He's my miracle worker. And I just want to thank you for the privilege of being here tonight. I thank your pastor for letting me share this experience once again. And I just ask that you pray for me. We need each other. And certainly we need God. And I just say tonight, may God's blessings be full and rich in your lives tonight is my prayer. Thank you again for allowing me to be here.